Okay, so feminists posit that women are oppressed. You said yes. Do you think women are oppressed?
I do believe women are oppressed, yes.
Here in the U.S.?
Yes. Although
Say
I
it,
think
please.
I
The first straight answer we got all night.
Different definitions of patriarchy, because I would say that patriarchy broadly refers to the state of the world. I'm really not interested in saying like blaming specific actors or genders or sexes and this is no, I think that's completely counterproductive. I think you can analyze the world through by analyzing the patriarchy, seeing the detrimental effects of that, and if you see an issue, you can address it.
Okay,
I don't think we need to get into this blame
that's fine.
game.
Okay,
Where do the positive
hold on.
aspects of patriarchy weigh into this conversation?
I know John Doyle's ready to sound off on
monumental.
that.
Monumental.
Let's stay here for a moment.
Didn't men create OnlyFans for these women to be angry
Brian,
about?
do you have a point you're trying to make?
Exactly.
Hey guys,
Okay,
hold on.
Men keep you in business.
Everybody,
please.
Oh my God.
pause.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Let's
Okay.
maintain this.
Losing control.
Please, I have just like a little back and forth. I want to have a little back and forth on this. Please allow me to just get through it. Okay. Are men the oppressors?
Men and women are the oppressors.
Oh, great.
Why are you laughing? It's true. You don't think women pay?
Are men the oppressors? Because if women are the oppressed, certainly then men must be the oppressors. Is that true?
No, I don't. I think it's too complicated to
Fair
say
enough.
one gender
Okay.
or the other.
But so you both agreed that women are oppressed.
Yes.
By themselves.
You're women. Are you oppressed?
Yes, in certain aspects.
Into the mic, please.
Yes.
How are
in
you as a
certain
straight white
aspects.
woman oppressed
Hold
in
on.
America?
Before you answer that, are you oppressed as a woman?
Yes, I would say belonging to identifying, being a woman, yes, that puts you at a disadvantage socially because of the social biases we've been discussing earlier on the panel.
Do you think that's why no one has asked
Bro,
you out?
Mary,
Hey
shut
guys,
the fuck up.
hey guys, everybody, Brian's trying to get somewhere
You're interfering with
this.
this clip farming. Come on.
Okay. How are you oppressed?
There's been countless and countless times, whether it be in academia, podcast, whatever, where I say something and people say like she's a dumb bitch, or in academia it's more like
That's not an example of your oppression.
Well, if people are literally saying that, but then when it comes to a man saying the exact same thing I said, being like, oh, that was actually a very intelligent point, well, then they are degenerating me, or then they...
Are you talking about double standards? Because there's plenty of...
That's a form of oppression. You don't think double standards is a
There's
form
some
of
that
oppression?
benefit men.
Using
There's
the
some
word
that
How are you
benefit
defining
women.
connotes themes
oppression?
of slavery and genocide, and some guy calling you a dumb bitch for accurately.
Oh my
being
God,
dumb
a form of
bitch.
oppression.
Wait a minute, this is literally
Have you ever
oppression.
hung out in like
See,
a Call of Duty,
Holy
like
shit.
Call of
If you
Duty
don't wanna
2?
get
This is the problem.
Not being able to get a job
You have
because...
conversations
Whoa, whoa,
like
whoa,
this,
whoa.
and you participate in conversations like this, and then feminists will literally think to themselves, why has every major religion in society imposed like borderline draconian rules on our behavior? And it's like, maybe this lends some credibility to that thing. I mean, women don't aspire to agency. This is the problem with women are oppressed. Can women be oppressed if they're not like tied down somewhere? You guys don't aspire to agency the way that men do. You are not fundamentally trying to lead, trying to do things like that. You think you are because you respond to the media and to society putting that idea in your head. But if that were not the
Sean,
case, you go back
I think
to like
Brian
the
wants you to
21st
end your
century.
little soy rant.
No, it's
No,
fine.
I was enjoying
Literally
that.
You go back
everything...
to
That
the
rant,
21st
that
century.
rant was
Everything you
soy
have
free.
said...
Called it a soy rant because he was making good
That
points.
rant was
No,
soy
no.
free.
Everything you have literally said are the same arguments people have used against black people in like the 60s.
Now we're going to the black
Yes.
Oh my fucking God.
100%.
Oh, black
you're
people, no!
No,
Not the
but
black
it's
people!
true, too. Holy
Shut the fuck
shit.
up. Shut the fuck up.
Okay, if you're gonna tell me to shut the fuck up, actually say something
Okay, yeah, I'm
afterwards.
gonna say
Otherwise,
something
you look
afterwards.
empty.
You've been yelling this entire time, so I haven't been able to say anything afterwards. You're not gonna sit here and fucking say that you being a whore is anywhere near the oppression that other groups, like black people or whatever, have faced.
You are the point.
No.
went
You're
over
saying
your
they're
head.
calling me a dumb bitch. I'm so
No.
oppressed.
I'm
If you
saying
wanna get
he's
called a dumb
saying-
bitch, then don't act like a dumb bitch. And
Okay.
don't fucking
John made
say that
salient
I have
points.
anything to do
No,
with
what
slavery.
I'm saying,
Right.
first of all, you guys took my point, completely fucking twisted it.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing like oppression Olympics here.
Oh,
She
no,
wasn't
no,
comparing
but
them.
she's
But
The point that I was trying to make
What about
is
the black
that
people?
No,
about
okay.
the black
The point that I was
people?
trying to make is that people look at my gender and have limited my opportunities when it comes to like, let's say, careers.
Look
or
at
when it
your
comes to
retardation.
academia.
Billy, go ahead.
No, they don't.
Into the mic.
They
Into
don't
the
have
mic.
your
You have a
retardation.
greater advantage being a woman today. Do you? I think.
mic. Into the mic.
Sorry. I think we should list. I think if we asked men and women at this table to list off how they're oppressed in today's society, then men could come up with a much bigger list.
I got
Yeah.
one.
On God.
I
got
guarantee
one.
not
I
a
got one.
single woman has done any landscaping in the
So
hot
Brian,
sun
you
to
think that
survive
you're like
on this
men are
panel.
oppressed? And you would say you're
Absolutely.
oppressed
That's
because-
oppression.
I
Absolutely.
think. Well,
By
I think
women.
if we're gonna play the oppression game, men.
I don't want to play that game.
Today,
But if you want to play that game, I
Well, I'm
guess we can
prepared
get
to play
into
it.
Let's play
Yeah.
it.
Men are more oppressed than women.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Can you
Yeah.
And
explain?
in fact, and not only today, but historically too.
In some ways, sure. Like if you want
Can
to
you
talk about like
Men
male
are scared to even
disposability-
speak to women.
If you want to talk about male
Women are scared to
disposability,
speak to
men
men.
No,
having
does that
like
have to do with
climbing rates of
anything?
like suicide, I'm gonna be with you.
What percentage
On those,
of
I won't even disagree with you.
what percentage of people that are homeless are men?
Probably the majority, no?
3 and 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the
Where does the
negative
matriarchy fit into
outcomes-
that oppression? Is that like?
Well, that's a really simple one. How long do you think a homeless woman would make it?
I think
She's
that
more likely
women,
to get
I agree
into,
with you, but I
what's
think
it-
a lot of women will rather
trafficking?
go end up on their
No.
back than end up on the streets.
That would rather what?
Women
End up
are
on their
more,
back than end up on the streets.
Sure, but
Who do you
I
think
mean,
is,
like
like,
even
in a
even
more
ignoring
vulnerable
hold on,
place?
even
Hold on,
ignoring that, I'm just saying that like there's a lot of questions that we ask in terms of like, and the oppression Olympics thing is weird. To be clear, because I'm drawing my own, so patriarchy arguably oppresses and raises up both men and women in different ways, right? But when we ask questions like, well, who's more homeless? Men can survive being homeless because we have a lot of biological advantages and because we're not subject to violence from other men in the same types of ways that women are, right?
Right.
When, for instance, when women talk about, or when red pillars say, you need a man to protect you from who? From other men, right? Because that's typically the people that are abusing or violating other women. So
Fair
when you ask
play.
that question, who's more likely to be homeless? It's probably going to be men, of course. It's like 98%. But
So-
women are going to make it homeless.
Fair
no
point,
matter
but I
what.
want to add on to that because
Sure.
she's saying that the patriarchy, disproportionately affects women in a negative way, and it doesn't affect men in a negative way. But then where does homelessness come into play?
So the reason why I don't like to use negative is because patriarchy is just like
I don't go based off of her example.
Sure,
That's what I'm
I
saying.
understand. Patriarchy is like a way that society is structured. It's enforced by everybody because in some ways men and women benefit from it. In some ways men and women hurt from it. But there are the way that we suffer under it, arguably, is subjective in whether or not it's good or bad. So, for instance, like I imagine on this side of the table, people would say that women being relegated to relatively narrow roles and how they can participate in the house and society, they consider that a good thing. Feminists traditionally would say, well, women being relegated to narrow roles in the house would be a bad thing, right? So it's hard to say that like is patriarchy good or bad. It's just like a form of organizing a society, the same way that a matriarchy would be, the same way egalitarian would be. There's going to be pros and cons to every type of organization, right? Even patriarchy in some ways is incredibly beneficial to how society is arranged. It makes like figuring out gender roles and households and everything incredibly fucking simple. And it gives really clear guidelines for how men are supposed to act and how women are supposed to act. That's like a benefit.
For sure.
But in some ways it's a negative.
Destiny
and that-
arguing for patriarchy
Well,
right
but
now?
in some
Let's
ways
go.
it's a negative because you might have an incredibly talented pool of women that could be contributing to society in really positive ways that are now basically relegated to being barefoot and pregnant in their homes all the time because we don't really want their contributions, right? The reason why I think that our society has succeeded more in the West than it did in any other place in the world is to some extent because we opened the floodgates to allow any type of person to have a conversation. And that's why podcasts like this or Fresh and Fit, you're getting people from fucking that have traveled to Saudi Arabia and Dubai coming back and arguing with black women and Hispanic women and men of all sorts of different backgrounds and religions are all coming together having these conversations. They're not doing that in fucking Saudi Arabia. They're not doing that in fucking Iran. They're not even doing that in a lot of places in Europe. That's happening in the United States of America. And I think it's largely because we've tried to break down a lot of those barriers.
Are you contributing the success of the West to the principle of free speech?
I think
Largely?
that for freedom of
Because-
speech and
because
for
the reason-
unlocking the talent pool that you have of people by not hardcore relegating them to certain roles.
The reason why I ask is because the West was successful relative to other civilizations long before we had free speech and equal rights for everybody.
I mean, the United States was kind of founded on pretty radical principles of free speech and democracy and democratic
yes, it
representation,
was,
right?
but the West existed prior to the United States, and
I'm talking about the real West, okay? The U.S. Fuck Europe, okay?
I mean, if we're talking
But
about
I'm just saying,
if
like,
we're
you
talking
would
about the
agree-
real
you
West,
would
it's
agree
the
that, like,
West
even
Coast, bro.
For even the people who all love to like love and hate, like people like Elon Musk, this guy came from like South Africa, right? Like there's so much cool shit that happens in the U.S. that only happens in the U.S.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
people come here, and I
agree.
know you guys have argued people come here for the opportunity and stuff. We have a really unique environment here, and I think largely it's because we've tried to push people outside of like the hardcore relegated roles that we feel like they need to be in, which I think benefits all of us.
America.
Yeah.
I do have to interrupt because we do need to get a couple of these donations read.